This is All Access Med School Admissions. I'm your host, Christian Essman, and hello again, everybody. Hearing this music sounds like grunge music to me, and I picked it out because grunge music started in the Pacific Northwest back in the 1980s and early 90s. It changed the face of rock music and brought us bands like Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and Alice in Chains and Nirvana. And so I felt like this is good music today because we're going to be talking with the other allopathic medical school located in Washington, and that's the University of Washington School of Medicine. So I know you're not here for a history or a music lesson or a music history lesson, so let's get to the real things that you came here to hear about today. It's been a couple weeks since the last episode, so thank you for your patience. Between interview days, reading applications, and some traveling, this whole admissions job thing can get in the way of the podcast stuff. So not to worry, though. I'll have another episode ready for you very soon featuring the University of California Irvine School of Medicine. And so for all you listeners in California, hang in there just a little bit longer. We'll get into you next. Also, All Access Army people, keep sending me your admissions related questions. As I've mentioned before, I'm working on a future episode where some previous guests, some familiar voices, I'll be back and I'll be dedicating an entire show to just answering listener questions. So that's right. It'll be all about you that time. So send your questions to allaccess@case.edu. Speaking of special episodes, I'm planning an episode coming up where I'll be joined by my Dean of Admissions, Dr. Lena Mehta, where we're going to be doing a show about what makes a good applicant and how that can translate into what makes for a good doctor. We gave a presentation on this topic earlier this fall, and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. So we thought, hey, let's bring it to you in a podcast format, and I think this is going to be something you're really going to like. Finally, if you're finding this podcast to be helpful, to you, then please swipe me, 5-star rating and leave a comment. It's a great way to help me get this out there to other people in the podcast world. So I appreciate that. All right. So today we're talking about the other allopathic medical school in the state of Washington. And like I said, that's the University of Washington School of Medicine. So here's a little information about this school. Founded in 1946, the University of Washington School of Medicine is located in the Pacific Northwest and is one of 2 allopathic medical schools in Washington. One of the most unique aspects of UW is that they are the most regional medical school in the U.S. as the only medical school for 5 states. Washington, obviously, Wyoming, Alaska, Montana, and Idaho. There's an acronym for this collection of states, and it's called WWAMI. We're going to hear us use this acronym a lot in this episode, so get used to hearing WWAMI. In addition to the campus in Seattle, UW has regional training sites in Moscow, Idaho, Laramie, Wyoming, Bozeman, Montana, Anchorage, Alaska, and Spokane, Washington. They also have clinical training partnerships with over 275 hospitals and clinics across those 5 states, which is pretty impressive. Considering this regional arrangement, University of Washington has a special responsibility to the people in these states. They're committed to building and sustaining a diverse academic community and to assuring that access to education and training is open to all learners from all segments of society, acknowledging a particular responsibility to the diverse populations within their region. UW is consistently ranked as one of the top medical schools training primary care and rural health physicians for over 20 years and is ranked first among all public medical schools in federal research funding. The UW School of Medicine is dedicated to improving the general health and well-being of the public. As the preeminent academic medical center in this region and as a national leader in biomedical research, they place a special emphasis on educating and training physicians, scientists, and allied health professionals dedicated to 2 distinct missions. Here you go. Meeting the healthcare needs of the region, especially by recognizing the importance of primary care and providing service to underserved populations. And 2, advancing knowledge and assuming leadership in the biomedical sciences and in academic medicine. The University of Washington School of Medicine is a public medical school and primarily accepts applicants only with connections to the WWAMI states. Approximately 95% of their applicants are from the WWAMI states. For the entering class of 2019, the medical school received 8,190 applications and interviewed 832 applicants for a class size of 270. 61% of their 2019 entering class were comprised of women, and 13% self-identified as underrepresented medicine. Today, you're going to be hearing me talk with Stella Yee. She's the Director of Admissions at the School of Medicine. Her responsibilities include overseeing the operations of the admissions office, developing policies and procedures, and working closely with the Associate Dean for Admissions to create strategic plans for selection and recruitment. She has given talks about admissions at national and local conferences and previously served on the National AMCAS Advisory Committee from 2014 to 2019. Miss Yee earned her Bachelor's of Arts and Master's of Education degrees from the University of Washington, so she's a proud Husky alum. Okay, the table is set, so let's just jump right into it with Stella Yee and the University of Washington School of Medicine. Well, hey, Stella, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. I'm really excited to have you on the show to tell us more about the University of Washington.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, this is great. It's such a unique program up there with as the WWAMI school, which we'll get into a lot of the details. And it's so your admissions process is unique, and the way your education is set up. So we have a lot of ground to cover. So, but before we do that, let's talk about you. I just read your bio sketch. You've been in admissions for a while. How did you start to get involved in admissions?
It just naturally happened. So I went to University of Washington, my undergrad. And then when I graduated, I ended up working for the School of Medicine at the front desk. So I actually started.
No kidding.
So I actually started in our office as the receptionist. And then over the years, I just was promoted to, a position in admissions, and then eventually promoted to the director. So I've been in admissions now since 2005, and I've been in this role since 2010.
Wow.
Yeah, so
That's
I think
so cool. So you're an alum of UW.
I am.
So you've been there forever.
I have been there for a very long time. Yes, and I think that has a lot to do with the fact that I think this is such a great, community environment and culture, and our office itself is so supportive and very collaborative, and it's and I get to work with some really inspiring students and faculty members. It makes sense to be here.
Mm-hmm. You must have a lot of institutional knowledge if you've been there since 2005. Mm-hmm. And if you can go back in your undergrad and master's years, you know a lot about that place, my guess.
I have, yes, I do. I've also seen how it's changed a lot in the years, and that's the thing that I've always just been kind of impressed with, just how we continue to just really innovate and really, make things that are better for our students as well as for the trying to create the best physicians for our region.
So you said region. Where are you located right now? Are you in Seattle?
I am in Seattle. So the School of Medicine is based in Seattle. So this is where, main operations lives with the University of Washington Seattle campus. However, we partner with universities in our, regional states to provide training for our medical students, as well as that's also where we have our interviews as well. Mm-hmm. And so we partner with University of Wyoming in Laramie to provide training for our Wyoming students, Montana State University in Bozeman for Montana students, University of Alaska Anchorage for Alaska students, University of Idaho in Moscow for our Idaho students. And then we've had a Spokane campus since 2009. 2008. And we've actually partnered with Gonzaga University in 2016 then to provide, a regional training site for our students there as well. Cool. So the really neat thing about having this, 6 different regional campuses and sites is that our students get to really spend time in their home state and really get a very, like a year and a half extended period to really kind of learn what the community is like there and really have that opportunity to meet and network with the physicians and other healthcare providers that are there.
Yeah. We're going to get into all these details here soon. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. Now, I know Dr. Muskie is the Dean of Admissions there. Is she in Seattle too?
She's actually based in Montana.
Okay.
So,
how does that work for your? Do you guys have phone calls every day, or how does your communication then work?
Well, it works really well. So we do have quite a bit of phone calls over email, a lot over text, a lot. The one thing I really appreciate is just how completely accessible she is, even if she's not physically here.
Yeah. That's important.
So, and I also think this is really great for her because then she also is able to, continue practicing in her clinic and see her patients that she's been working with for really years and work with our school as well.
I think it speaks to the level probably of the caliber of people in your office that she can be in Montana and you guys are functioning there, running the show in Seattle. And so I think that she trusts you a lot, and it sounds like you have a really smooth process there. So you've been in Seattle now for a long time. What do you do for fun there in the city?
What are
your hobbies?
So my hobbies are, so my friends tease me because they say I tend to choose very fringe hobbies. So right now, I'm learning how to play ukulele and I'm learning how to play the guitar.
Cool.
And before that, I played roller derby for 5 years.
Oh my gosh.
But I've retired since then. Yeah. And I'm working on less contact sports. although I am getting involved in dodgeball right now. Yeah. And so I'm getting a lot of more teasing for that.
Don't roller derby players have nicknames?
They do, yes.
Did you have a nickname?
I did, yes. It was Sci-Fi Wasabi, which is I took from a song by this Japanese pop band Chibomato. It was from their album, which was all their songs were about food, or it was related to food, and so that was one of the songs.
Oh my gosh, that's a riot. That's cool. See, so I was just going to ask you, what's something that people are surprised to learn about you? And I think we just blew it away right there.
Yeah, I think most people tend to be kind of surprised about that one.
Yeah. Hey, well, let's switch gears and talk. Let's get into the nuts and bolts of the curriculum a little bit and bring to people some of those highlights about the University of Washington and the curriculum that you like people to know about when they come and meet you, or they're coming to a fair to just learn more about the University of Washington. What are some of those highlights in those first 2 years that you want people to be aware of or walk away with after they meet you?
So I think what really sets us apart is the whole WWAMI partnership. Yeah, so the WWAMI partnership has existed since 1971, and it was a way to address the physician shortage that we had in the region. So part of our agreement is that we will take residents from Wyoming, Alaska, Montana, and Idaho, and we will train them in hopes that they will return back to their states to practice medicine. And because of this partnership, they're also providing state funding as well. And so essentially the states are actually paying the difference of in-state and out-of-state tuition for the students who are coming to our medical school. And so because of that, when we're looking at who are considered our in-state, applicants, we don't really use the term in-state, for our institution because of the partnership. So we really, when we're looking at our applicants who are preferred applicants, it's really the folks who are from the WWAMI region. So our regional applicants will be considered comparatively from other applicants from their states. So that means that a Wyoming applicant will only be considered comparatively with other Wyoming residents, and we have a set number of positions set aside for those students. So we have 20 seats just for Wyoming residents, 40 seats just for Idaho students, 30 seats just for Montana students, 20 seats just for Alaska. And with that ensures that the folks who are applying from those states are going to be guaranteed those spots in our class.
Yeah.
It also means that we have a very kind of diverse, class as itself, just because we have so many folks who are coming from different backgrounds as well.
So let me, Stella, if I can ask you, we're going to get into the application process, but do these students then, do they all at some point come to Seattle for school, or do they are doing their training at these regional sites in the area there, in whether it's in Moscow, Idaho, or Laramie, or do they all eventually come to Seattle?
One of the things that we really pride ourselves is making sure that our students kind of have a diverse training experience. So that means all of our students who are at the regional campuses are required to actually come to Seattle to have to do some of their clerkships. So they're actually required to have 8 weeks at one of the Seattle hospitals that are associated with the University of Washington. So that means it could be at Children's, the University of Washington Medical Center. That's a tertiary hospital, Harborview Medical Center, which is our level 1 trauma center for the region. Could also be at the UW Medical Center Roosevelt. We really want our students to have that experience of being able to see medicine in a rural community, small town, small city environment, as well as a very large urban environment as well. And so that means all of our folks who are in Seattle will also then be required to spend time outside of Seattle as well. So we actually require students to do a minimum of 24 weeks of clerkships in cities that are like in Eastern Washington or, near the Oregon border, but also in the other states as well, like taking a pop-up plane to an island in Alaska for one of their clerkships. Yeah, or going to Pocatello, Idaho for maybe a clerkship as well. We really feel there's a lot of value for the students to have these experiences in different communities and working with different patients, because I think it's very difficult to try to get a similar experience outside of medical school. And this is really an opportunity for them to see how the same specialty is practiced in different places. So they can see how family medicine is practiced in Seattle versus how family medicine is practiced in Othello, Washington, or Powell, Wyoming.
I was just going to say, I know that University of Washington is well known nationally for their primary care and rural medicine. I think that's one thing you guys are really known for. So this kind of speaks to that, right?
Yes, absolutely. So a fun fact about our region is that our states make up 27% of the total landmass of the country.
Oh my gosh.
I know. We got to thank Alaska for that one.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
But we only have 3% of the total population. So I think it says a lot about just, how spread out, our communities really are.
So the first 2 years, I was doing some reading that there's a lot of small group work, that they go to school 4 days a week. Right. And the 5th day, there's some other, some clinical things. Can you talk us through kind of what that looks like?
So for the first 15 months, students will be spending the first 15 months in their home state or their campus site. For the first 2 days, so like Monday and Tuesday, they'll have class. Thursday, Friday, they'll have class. All the instruction is going to be in the afternoon. So, and it's going to be around 4 hours, and it's going to be a mixture of traditional lectures, small group learning, problem-based learning, team-based learning. The whole morning is going to be available for them to either prepare for class, or get out and be involved in the community by doing some volunteer work, or maybe, being more involved in the many student groups that we have associated with the medical
sleeping
school.
In.
No, well, they can sleep in also. But I think that a lot of our students are very, very motivated individuals, and so they tend to fill that time up with, activities. We do also have 1 day a week set aside for clinical instruction, and so this is typically on Wednesdays, and that's going to alternate between their primary care practicum. This is when they're going to be in a clinic with a primary care doctor and just seeing all the patients that are coming through that particular clinic, and their foundations for clinical medicine. And FCM, that's the abbreviation for that. That is one of the other things that really sets us apart, because that's when you can see our college mentorship system at work.
Tell us about that.
So we have a very large incoming class of 270 people. We have students at different sites. So Spokane also has 60 students at their site. and then we have 100 students in Seattle. So when you have very large classes, it's easy for students to feel lost sometimes. And so the college mentorship system was set up to really create a small, school experience in a large school setting. And when students start medical school, they're actually matched up to a faculty member who's part of the college mentorship system. So they're a college mentor. That person serves as one of their many advisors, but as a go-to advisor throughout medical school. So they have someone that they can always go to at any point if they have questions, if they have concerns. And also, they serve a role to kind of help them navigate not only the school institution as well, but also just to kind of navigate the profession. So they serve like a coach, a cheerleader, a support person, for them while they're here. So oftentimes students might go to them first to talk about, thinking about different specialties, and they can connect them with other physicians or other mentors that also other the specialties that they're considering. Sometimes they might talk to them just about life, like if they're
personal
having
issues that come up, right?
Like just trying to find balance in life. And so those are, so the mentors are often what are there basically to kind of provide support for the students, but they also serve as teachers for them. So when they meet up with them for their FCM day, they're actually going to be in a hospital setting. Each mentor will have 6 students, 5 to 6 students. And then in that small group, they're going to go to different patient bedsides, learning how to present patient cases, learning how to do exams and interviews as well. And so that's an opportunity for the college mentor to give them feedback and for their peers to give them feedback in that small group setting.
Is that during the FCM session that occurs on the 1 day a week? Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
One thing I probably should add is that when the students are at the regional campuses, even though they're at different sites and they are working with different faculty members, ultimately everyone has the same curriculum. There are milestones that each each class is trying to meet. They're taking all of their exams and quizzes on the same days.
Oh wow! Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, and so we monitor it very closely as well to make sure that the quality of the education is the same and for all the sites.
Yeah, that's important. That's a good thing you brought up, because I was going to ask is if you have these regional campuses, how are the curricula structured? But it sounds like everybody's the same curriculum, taking the tests all on the same days. So that's really cool. Do they ever do any distance learning where everybody's like logging into the same lecture or something together as a class? Or is it just more? Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, so we actually have elective classes that students can take as well, and it's open. And there are some that are just open to all students, and in those cases, those are often, online courses that students would then log in and participate in.
What other kind of highlights do you like people to know about those first 2 years? Are there other elective opportunities or things that they're doing that are special at each regional campus that are kind of unique to that community that you think are cool and worth mentioning?
So I think that another thing that we have is we do have some time set aside at the end for folks to do some research or to study. There is also, during that year and a half, they will also have time during the summer after their first year to participate in something like a Rural Underserved Opportunities Program. This is or RUOP. This is an experience where they go out to a rural or underserved community. It could be within their state, it could be in another state. And they just work with a community for a clinic. They're at a clinic for like about 6 weeks. And they're encouraged not just to, observe the patients that are coming in, but also kind of see what it's like to live there and what the patients' lives and experiences are like and how that would impact their health. Students could also take that time to do research. Actually, the summer is really their time to do their research requirement, which is the independent investigative inquiry.
So I think that's one thing that was unique that jumped out at me when I was doing my homework about the school, is that you have this independent investigative project. So when this is all done on each campus, and do they choose the topic? How does that whole thing work?
So we have an independent investigative inquiry requirement for students to complete, in part to kind of reflect our dual mission for our school, which is to train clinical clinicians as well as to train biomedical researchers. So we really feel it's important for our students to kind of have an appreciation for both research, even if they're planning to practice in a rural clinic in the future, but also, even if they plan to be in a lab for the rest of their life, we do want them to understand how that research that they're, knowledge that they're creating could be used by the physicians that are out in the community. And so for that reason, we have this research requirement, and students can have different ways that they can approach it. So they can either do a traditional bench research. So that would mean completing a medical student research training project where they're going to be in a lab during the summer, a project or something that could be accomplished within the summer. They could go out into the community and do more of a community-related project. So that would be the Rural Underserved Opportunities Program, working in a rural or underserved clinic. And again, just kind of being encouraged to really see what life is like for the folks that are living in that community and how that impacts their health. Oftentimes, students create something that they can leave behind. They can also do a literature review. So if that's something that might be speaking to them more. We also have a simulation lab on campus in Seattle. So if folks are really interested in technology and how it could be used in, training health professionals, they can partner with the WWAMI Institute for Simulation and Healthcare, or WISH, to create a training module. And then finally, another option is for folks who really are interested in global health. We have another experience-driven project that they can do with the Global Health Immersion Program. So Global Health Immersion Program is a summer experience. It's about 8 weeks, and they're going to be going to a site that could be in Uganda, Kenya, Nepal, Peru, or Dominican Republic.
Wow.
And essentially just helping out at that clinic. And then their III project then could be something that would be geared towards that particular community.
Oh, wow. That's great. Because people ask us all the time. I'm sure you get the same question too about global health opportunities. So it sounds like you have a great one built into that summer curriculum there. That's great. Let me ask you this, Stella. Are there any misconceptions that people have about University of Washington that when you go out and talk to prospective applicants, you feel like you need to kind of clear some things up for them?
So a lot of it is kind of admissions related.
Yeah. Let's go there.
Okay. I think that one misunderstanding that students have with our school is that you have to be interested in rural medicine and primary care in order to be admitted. So we are, known for training primary care doctors and rural doctors and family medicine doctors, but that's really not that's not the only thing we're looking for. And especially when students are at such an early part of their career, what we discover is that oftentimes as students are in school, they're doing their clerkships, or getting more opportunity to really interact with, the physicians that are in those specialties they're thinking about, that sometimes what they think they want to do ends up changing. And so our commitment is really to try to find just physicians for our region. And so that means looking for students who not necessarily want to go into a specific specialty, but, how do they know that that's a specialty that they want to go into? Now, of course, we're going to have applicants who want to go into primary care, who know they want to go into rural medicine, and that is wonderful. And so we have programs that students can apply to if they already know that that's what they want to do. So we have the Targeted Rural Underserved track.
Is that called Trust?
Yes, it's called Trust.
All right, we'll put that in the show notes. Yeah, I'll make note of that.
Okay.
So tell us about that.
So Trust is a pipeline program for students who are interested in becoming physicians in those states. A lot of them, oftentimes, is folks who are really interested in primary care or practicing in small cities or rural communities.
Okay.
And it's a great way for students to identify early on that this is what the career that they want to go into, and also to get that additional support from Trust mentors to get that additional clinical and curriculum components as part of their training. So that means when they're admitted to Trust in the summer, they'll be matched up to a clinic that they'll be working with while they're in school, and going back to that. They'll also have specific classes that they should be registering for in order to kind of get that the tools and resources that they need to be great rural physicians. And then they'll also have we'll also be completing the WWAMI Rural Integrated Training Experience, where it's a integrated clerkship experience. They're going to be in a clinic in a rural town and essentially just kind of seeing all the patients that are coming through. It's trying to give them a more accurate experience of what their career could be.
Yeah. What about, you've been there a while now. What do you hear from current students that they say that you overhear them saying like they like the most about your medical school? Do you kind of pick up? I mean, we always kind of hear we're kind of on the periphery once you're in admissions, like we're not in student affairs. And so we're not, but we hear things like, what do you kind of hear from students about what they really like about coming to medical school there?
I think it really comes down to the WWAMI clerkship experience. There's really a lot of variety that students can do. And because a lot of we have over 200 in different clerkship sites for our students. Wow. Students really get kind of a very, varied experience. Depending on which clerkship site there are, if they're at a site where, again, they're in a small town, there's not many other healthcare providers there, a lot of medical students may then have a lot of opportunity to get, direct hands-on experience. So a student who's in, a OB/GYN clerkship, a small community where there's only one other physician there, they're probably going to be very involved and there when someone goes into labor, they're going to be the ones participating in delivering the baby.
Wow.
But an OB/GYN clerkship in Seattle might look a little bit different because, being in a tertiary hospital, you're going to have a lot more complicated cases. And so it's an opportunity for them to kind of see that and the team that's involved in the planning that's involved with that.
Oh, that's cool. That's great. It sounds like I get a broad view of medicine, depending on kind of if you're going to rural area or into a more urban setting. That's really great.
And the other thing is that we feel so strongly that students should have this kind of varied experience that we actually pay for students to travel to the sites. And we also arrange for housing and lodging as well while they're there.
Yeah, it's a good thing to mention. So you guys have it all set up for them. Wow, that's cool.
And sometimes a lodging could be an apartment. They may even include a car. Sometimes it's a house that they share with another medical student. We feel it's so important that the school is investing basically resources to make sure that this experience is comfortable for the students.
Yeah, that's great. Let's talk about kind of transitioning and talk a little bit about the admissions process because it is kind of complex. I mean, compared to a lot of other medical schools that we've talked to, this is one of the most complex, what looks like to me, admissions processes because you're having to work with all these regional campuses. Yeah. All these states that you're working with. I guess we should start first with what are some of the basic requirements for an applicant to apply to the University of Washington? How do I get a secondary? Should I even be filling out a primary? What do you advise applicants? What do you tell kids when they're considering applying to Washington? What are the things they have to check off to make sure they're doing it right?
So we have a very mission-driven process. And I always encourage students to look at our mission statement to see if they meet it. before they consider applying. One of our missions is to train physicians from the WWAMI region to serve the WWAMI communities. So if you're from WWAMI, you should apply to us right off the bat. And if you're outside of WWAMI, then I would encourage you to look at your application, look at your experiences, and see if you might be able to meet our other missions. So we'll also consider students who have, extensive service record working with disenfranchised populations and communities. And so these are typically our students who've done Peace Corps, Teach for America, or have started clinics or other, health-related programs in communities that didn't have any, or people with strong leadership experiences, or they come from a disadvantaged background. Because we're also really committed to making sure that students from disadvantaged backgrounds have educational opportunities available. We also have a research component with our mission as well. And for folks who are outside of WWAMI, if they're really interested in, or I guess within WWAMI as well, if students who are really interested in research, they can also consider applying to our medical scientist training program, our MD PhD concurrent program as well.
So if I'm submitting a primary, do you send the secondary out to everybody who submits a primary? How does that work?
We're selective in regards to sending out the secondary applications because we want to make sure that we don't want to waste our applicants' time if they're not going to be a good fit for our program or if we don't feel they're going to be competitive. And so we do have several screening mechanisms in place before someone gets a secondary.
Okay. So you have some academic cutoffs, is that right?
We do.
Yeah.
So for our WWAMI applicants, actually I should probably preface this. Our academic cutoffs are going to change every year as we look at how the percentile ranking is assigned for the MCAT scores, because that changes every year.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
For this current cycle for E20, for our WWAMI applicants, the academic cutoff is a 3.0 GPA and 495 on the MCAT. Now, if they have a GPA between 2.7 and 3.0, we will consider them for a secondary if they have postbaccalaureate work or graduate work.
I see.
For our non-WWAMI applicants is 3.25 GPA and 500 on the MCAT.
All right.
Now, the academic cutoff is in place not necessarily because we feel this is the GPA or MCAT you need to be successful in the program. That's going to depend a lot more on just a trajectory in grades. That's going to be dependent on if you took the MCAT before and how you did on that. We have the academic cutoff in place as a way to just kind of help us manage the volume of applications that we have in our office.
Yeah.
So, and because it's an automated cutoff, and we recognize that it doesn't necessarily recognize those more complex, like taking the MCAT multiple times or having post-bac grades or graduate work. I do tell students that if feel that they might have been rejected because of the academic cutoff, but they have post-bac work and they have graduate work that it's solid and they have a 500 on the MCAT to email our office.
So there's an informal appeals process.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we will take a look and see if it makes sense for them to go back in the pool.
Most of the students that are applying to you are probably from the WWAMI schools. One of the requirements that I saw that kind of stood out to me was that UW requires at least 40 hours of shadowing. Is that correct?
So we don't like to call it a requirement because we realize how difficult. How difficult it is for students to get physician shadowing. We feel that physician shadowing is really the best way for students to really understand the day-to-day responsibilities that a doctor has. I always tell students that if you take someone out for coffee and ask them to tell them about your day, what you're hearing from them is really like a filtered perspective of what a doctor does. They're telling you what they think you would find interesting and what they think is important. So it's really reflective also kind of on their values
Mm-hmm.
as well. But if a student shadows a doctor and is basically just watching everything that happens, that allows a student then to make their own value as, kind of make their own decision on what is important, what is not important, what was interesting to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do expect students to have a minimum of 40 before they submit their application, but we also recognize how challenging it could be for some students to be able to get the shadowing, especially folks who may not necessarily have physicians in their social network. We do recognize that it is, to a certain extent, those who already have those connections are going to have a little bit easier time to get them than necessarily folks who don't. And so that's something that the committee is mindful of when we're reviewing applications. But again, we do feel that this is a great way for students to really kind of see what the day-to-day responsibilities is like.
One thing I got to say that your website about shadowing is awesome. You have a whole page dedicated to physician shadowing, which I'll put a link to the show notes because it goes into, really what you're looking for and like kind of your expectations, like these recommendations about hours, but also what you kind of just mentioned, like why shadow? And then these like questions to ask yourself when shadowing, which are applicable to any applicant that is doing this stuff. I don't think it's just for applicants to your med school, but these are really good questions to be asking, like self-reflective things to be considering when you're going out and shadowing. So I love this resource. Great job.
Thank you so much. Our office spends so much time and worked so hard on that to make sure, because we do know the challenge of, for some students, they don't know exactly what they're trying to get out of if they're just following someone around. And so we do want to try to give them some tools and guidance so that they make sure that experience is, it's going to be meaningful.
Yeah. If you're listening to this, you have to go look at this site. It is excellent. It is an excellent resource. Speaking of websites, when we were, Stella, just talking a minute ago about your requirements for receiving a secondary, and you were kind of going through the metrics of the cutoffs and things, are those posted on a site on your website somewhere so kids can reference it? Or is it just an internal thing that you talk about?
We are working on getting that on our website.
Okay. So eventually that'll be on there so people can go and check it. But I think the bottom line is it changes every year.
Yes.
And so it will fluctuate based on how national metrics sounds like, and then probably local metrics look. Another thing I wanted to kind of bring up is that you also require Casper as a part of the application process. Is that correct?
That is correct.
How does that work in your application process? Like, how does Casper fit in?
So for folks who may not be familiar with Casper, it's a situational judgment test, and it's meant to evaluate characteristics that we would feel is important for future physicians. And so that's going to mean professionalism. It means empathy, integrity, compassion, things that you would want in your own physician. Right now, we're requiring our students to take it, but we've actually haven't implemented it in our process yet.
I see. Okay.
So we're still gathering data, and we're trying to kind of see what it really means.
Yeah.
Before
we're in the same boat.
Put in our process. Yeah.
I get it. We're starting that next year, and we're kind of struggling with, do we start looking at the data? Are we using the data? Well, let's just start collecting the data. So it is interesting. Some other schools are using that too. But so do you have to have Casper done and completed to receive the secondary, or just before you're invited? Just if you're invited for an interview, you have to have it done before the interview. For
this cycle, we are asking students to take it before they complete the secondary application.
Okay.
So while the secondary is due on December 1st, they actually have to take Casper by November 12th. Okay. We don't need the scores at this point because we're not really using it as part of the admissions process. And in fact, our admissions committee has no access to any of that information right now. It's just us in the administrative office. Once we have the data, we're going to see how we can implement it. And I suspect that it probably will be part of the screening process. But we do pride ourselves in being transparent with our applicants. So I think once we make the decision how that might be used, we'll probably put it on our website.
Just collecting it for now and just kind of looking at it internally and just kind of figuring out what it means to your school. One thing I was thinking about, if I could ask you, are there any preferences given to somebody who may be they're from a whammy state? But what if they go to college, like in California, or they're going to college in Texas? And then I'm going to apply back to University of Washington. Do you guys give some kind of preference to students that have already stayed within the WWAMI schools, like the WWAMI states? Do you get this question?
We do get the question actually quite often. We really rely on legal state of residence. If they are WWAMI resident and they're going to school in Texas, that's fine. If they're a WWAMI resident but they're going to school in California, that's still great. I mean, for us, we're really just looking at, are you keeping ties with the states? If, however, someone ends up establishing California residency or Texas residency, we won't be able to really consider their ties.
Okay.
Because it comes down to their current legal residence.
But I think the take-home message here is that if you could get them back home, you'll take them. Yeah. So that'd be cool. Okay. One thing I was thinking about, like if there's any kind of preferences, doesn't sound if you're from the WWAMI states, then we're considered on the same playing field as everybody, whether you're going to college outside of there or not.
You are. So there really isn't a preference where students go for undergrad at all. And I think a lot of students, I get a common question as well, like, well, is it better for me to go to this school or that school? And it really comes down to what is the best school for you? Like, do you know what your learning style is like? And is that adaptable to that community? Do you see yourself thriving there? Do you see yourself being challenged in a good way there?
Yeah.
In the end, it doesn't really matter where you go as long as you make use of the opportunities that are available.
I hope we just put some people at ease with just that 1.5 minute discussion there about that, because I could see how students, like you just said, like, should I go here or should I go there? If I'm looking to come back to go to med school here in University of Washington, is it okay if I leave? Is it okay I come back? So
no, leaving is fine. But I do want to strongly encourage folks to contact the residency offices early, just so that they know what they need to keep in regards to documents.
What's a residency office?
We have several offices in those partner universities that are confirming that the applicant is eligible for the WWAMI program. So they're looking at tax documents, they're looking at driver's license, they're looking at what ties you have that is in that state. And each state sets up their own state residency policies and rules. And so I would encourage folks who are thinking of moving, or more importantly, working after, in another state before they apply to our program, to really check with them to make sure that you would be considered a resident. There's nothing worse than someone who's grown up in Washington and then they move to a different state, haven't spent enough time in that state to establish state residency in that state, but have let go enough ties from Washington, and then be considered a resident of no state. That is brutal. Yeah. And state residency is really important for our admissions process, because that's really how we're going to process your application. If you are a WWAMI resident and you're above that academic cutoff, the other requirements is that you do have to have citizenship or permanent residency in the U.S. We will consider DACA students if they have verified and considered eligible for the WWAMI program. Those are other requirements. But if you are from WWAMI and you're above the academic cutoff and you have those requirements, you will automatically get a secondary application. That's to show our commitment to our WWAMI residents. If you are not from WWAMI, then there is an additional screening process where we're going to determine if you might help us further those other two missions I mentioned, which is that they have, it's clear from your experience and from your application that you want to work with disenfranchised communities, or you come from a disadvantaged background, and you look like you would be a competitive applicant. If we feel that, then we'll ask you to complete an essay. That's not a secondary. I've seen it been called pre-secondary.
A new layer.
I know, it's a new layer. Add to the complexity. It's like an onion. They'll complete a pre-secondary or a mission statement. We call it a mission statement essay, where they tell us how they think they help us meet our mission.
So if I'm an applicant and I checked off UW, and I sent in my primary, And then you guys I met some requirements. You took a look at it and you're like, let's see if you're really, if you're really into this. So then you're going to send me a mission statement essay and I'm going to complete it and say, this is why I think I fit your mission statement, or this is why I'm interested in University of Washington. And I'm going to send it back to you.
Yes, and that's if you're a non-whammy applicant.
So okay.
Non-whammy.
Okay. Right.
So whammy applicants don't have to complete the step.
Okay.
So non-whammy, you'll get invited to complete an essay if we feel that you could meet our mission. You have 2 weeks to fill it out.
That's important.
You send it back to us. Then we'll do another review to see if we agree with you. And then if we do agree with you and we also feel that you would be a competitive applicant, then we'll invite you to complete a secondary at that time.
Okay. What's on the secondary application then?
The secondary application is when we'll ask for your letters. Okay. So that's a common question I get from applicants. Do I have to have my letters when I submit my AMCAS application? The answer is no.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So we don't look at the letters until you complete the secondary. So we'll ask for your letters. This is when you should take the CASPER test. Okay. We will also ask for proof that you are eligible for the WWAMI program. So that means submitting your verification. Well, getting the verification from the offices that we're working with. Okay. We will ask you to complete some additional essays that are really going to be geared towards reflecting on your experiences. One of them is going to be asking you to is going to give you an opportunity to kind of elaborate further on your personal statement from your AMCAS application. If there's anything that you didn't already cover there that you want that we should know about, you should include it in that. Not to copy and paste it. We ask folks not to copy and paste it.
From another med school. Essay.
Or at least don't copy and paste your own personal statement and put it in there. We ask folks to talk about how their experiences prepare them to be a physician, what perspectives or experiences they bring that would enrich the class, what obstacles they've overcome, and also how do societal inequities in the U.S. affected them or the patients that they've interacted with. Wow. So again, we really want them to be very insightful and really thinking about the things that they've done and experienced and how that could really add to the class, add to how they can use it to connect with their patients that they could be working with. And also the obstacle questions, really just to see how resilient you are. Are you someone who, if you encounter, challenges, how do you overcome that?
Let me ask you about that. So how do you feel about a person who, let's just say, life's been okay. They've been fortunate in their family to not have any tragedies and things have just been, life's been good. It's no fault of their own. How do you feel if somebody writes a response to say, I haven't had a significant adversity to overcome. My challenges have been more academic, I guess. What do you say to those people that maybe come to you and go, I don't really have like any tragic events to share with you that I've had to overcome? What's your advice to those kind of applicants?
Well, I would say that we're not looking for tragic events.
So don't invent something.
When you're talking about obstacles, I think that everyone has obstacles that they've encountered in their life. Yeah. And I think that the response to that particular question kind of just shows how introspective the individual is. And so I don't think an obstacle has to be a tragedy. I think it could, that just kind of challenged you. So I've seen, very thoughtful, wonderful essays about their obstacle being public speaking.
Okay. Great example.
And something that, and why it was a challenge for them, but also how did they overcome that? Yeah. What were the steps they took to try to improve their, speaking, to be able to be more comfortable? And so with that particular question, it shows us not only resilience and grit, but also just how do you learn?
I would have to think that one obstacle you would not want to write about is like if you had a C in physics during the midterm, like or something. Yeah. Like probably not. Like, would you say stay away from something like that?
Absolutely. Yeah. In part because I think that when you start with grades in general, we get your MCAS application. We see how you did in your classes. We see how you did before, after that. And generally, we're really just focused on more of the recent coursework on seeing how you would do in school. And I think stressing too much about a C in a class, I think that kind of shows how narrow your perspective really is, and also suggests that maybe you haven't had a lot of life experience.
Mm-hmm. I've also heard from some other colleagues of ours that, like, with similar kind of essay questions, that I've heard them advise, like, don't write about that taking the MCAT was your challenge. Everybody has to take the MCAT.
Yeah. And again, it goes back to maybe this applicant hasn't done a lot. Right. And maybe they just need to kind of do some more, just go out there and
get some more worldly experiences before they're applying to medical school.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've gotten this far. You have sent me the secondary. I've sent it back to you. You've reviewed it, and you say, hey, we want to interview you. But now how does this work when you have regional interviews? Walk us through that process.
For our Wyoming, Alaska, Montana, and Idaho applicants, our students will interview in their home state, so at our partner universities.
Okay.
And the reason why we do that is, one, because we want to make sure that our students get to see the foundation site they're going to be at, and that they'll be taking their classes at, and that they'll be spending a lot of time in. We also want to make sure that we understand how expensive traveling to interviews can be. Many of our applicants from those states still have family, still have friends that are in the States. If they're not already living there and going to school there, having a regional interview site that's in their home state allows them to kind of reduce the cost of travel. For our Washington students, on their secondary application, they will tell us if they prefer to be in the Seattle campus, if they prefer to be in the Spokane campus, or if they have no preference.
Okay.
And if they prefer to be in the Spokane campus, they will interview in Spokane. For our applicants that are interviewing at the sites outside of Seattle, there are designated interview weeks that we have just for those residents. So all of our Wyoming applicants are interviewed in 1 week. All of our Montana students are interviewed in 1 week in Montana.
Okay.
And then our Alaska students are all interviewed in 1 week in February. Our Spokane students will actually have two weeks of interviews. So there'll be 1 week in November and 1 week in February. The idea is that the other benefit of that is that students will hear back on the status of their application the following week.
Oh, wow.
So because we're admitting students on a cohort system, so again, all of the Wyoming applicants will be considered comparatively with other Wyoming residents. We interview everyone that week, and then we have the voting meeting at the end. Next week, everyone hears back if they are accepted, not accepted, or on the alternate list.
Oh, so you just knock these states out like is week by week, one by one. Oh, that's amazing. Now, do you travel to these when you have these interview days? Are you going around and like a site as a site manager or anything?
We are very lucky and honored to have like some amazing folks who are at these regional sites, and so we have our colleagues at the sites coordinating the interviews for us. So the folks that the applicants would meet, in Moscow for their interviews, if they're from Idaho, will be meeting the same people who they could go to and turn to when they're students for any, questions about the program or, for assistance with some of the students' services stuff. And so we do have, our colleagues who are at the site running the interview day logistics.
So you have these weeks set up and you're coming there. What's the interview day like? What's the interview structure like? Who am I going to meet?
So I should also add that if the folks are interviewing in Seattle, they're interviewing this current season. They're interviewing between October through February.
Okay.
And so we have 3 to 5 days of interviews during the week. Now, in regards to regardless of where you go for your interview, there's going to be an opportunity for students to meet current students.
Great.
So applicants will meet current student. There's often a meal that's going to be there. So it could be a lunch on the interview day. It could be a dinner the night of. Cool. applicants would also have an opportunity to do a tour of the facilities and campus as well. The exact logistics is going to vary depending on the site. For the Seattle site, we have applicants come in the morning, and then we do a welcome. We go over the curriculum, and then they get a tour of the facilities. They get an opportunity to meet with financial aid. They get to meet with the Center for Health Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion office to learn more about the programming that they have here. They'll have an opportunity to talk to a current faculty member to learn more about the work that's happening at the school, and then also a lunch with students.
Great. That's cool.
And then opportunity to attend classes if they're available.
That's always fun.
Yeah.
What's the interview situation like? Is it one-on-one interviews, or do you guys do MMI?
So we're unique in that we do panel interviews.
Oh, that's right.
So each applicant meets with 3 interviewers. We have 200 committee members.
Jeez.
Our admissions committee is big, in part because we're trying to schedule 3 interviewers to meet with 1 applicant each time. Our committee members are all volunteers. These are all folks who are very passionate about medical education and finding the best physicians, as future colleagues. The composition includes current medical students as well as current physicians that are in the community, faculty members, biomedical researchers. We also include folks who are from other health professions as well, because we feel, medicine is very much a team sport. So we have physician assistants who are also on our committee, nurses, and we even have community members as well.
Okay. Yeah.
Who are involved in the school. Yeah.
What advice do you give to applicants that are coming to interview for a panel interview? Because that's a little bit different situation. Is there any general advice that you give applicants to prepare?
We have a lot of resources on our website on how to prepare for our interviews, because I know that a lot of students do find the idea of meeting 3 interviewers as a bit intimidating. They should rest assured that we all want them to be successful. So we're trying. So we're not going to ask questions that are trying to trick them or anything, or we're not going to play good cop, bad cop.
I'm glad you said that, because I think some people might think that there's somebody in the group who's been kind of assigned to be the nice person, and somebody's going to be grouchy, and somebody might be in between.
No. That is not that is a common feeling, but that's not actually what we do. That's not the intention. Our intention is that we want to make sure that this is a welcoming environment and comfortable environment for our applicants, as best as it can be in an interview, situation. I think that I would advise them to take a deep breath. The great thing is that our interviewers have read their application already in advance. So they already know, the experiences that they're coming in with. And the interview is an opportunity for us just to kind of reaffirm what we read from them directly. So, and also just kind of get a sense of just how do they interact with people in person. There are going to be some questions that they're going to get that it's pretty straightforward, like, why you want to be a doctor. And then there are going to be other questions that are going to require a longer response. Those are typically our questions that are more ethically related. Okay. Because we want to get a sense of just how do they think through difficult problems. And so like talking out your thought process, being able to say, well, I know I have this information and this is what I understand of that. I know I need this, information to really make a statement. And it's because I know this is missing information I don't have. This is how I would approach to try to get that information. And then once I get this information, this is what I would do. So we really want to see just how people think on the spot. And because we're really looking at the problem-solving aspect during the interview, we do also have a role play that all of our applicants can expect. And we have, the role play is we have a library of role play scenarios that our interviewers use. All of our interviewers are familiar with the role play, and they may take on positions as a patient that the applicant is working with, or a colleague. And with the role play scenarios, what we what we want them to do is be able to just kind of show us how they would interact with other people. So this means we don't want them to diagnose anyone.
Yeah, that's good. Okay.
We're not expecting, prescriptions or, we don't want them to focus on the medical symptoms or anything.
Okay.
This is more about how do you make sure someone feels heard? What do you do in regards to verbal communication and nonverbal communication to make sure someone feels comfortable? How do you make sure that you show them that you're actively listening to them? And then how do you figure out if there's other issues that might come up? So a scenario that I like to use as an example, so that means that this is a scenario that applicants can never expect, will never expect on the interview day, is if, the applicant's asked to be the doctor. One of the interviewers will play a 15-year-old obese patient of them, and then they'll be asked, and then the patient is asking the applicant / doctor a waiver to get out of PE.
Okay.
So the biggest mistake an applicant can make is try to jump to a yes or no answer. Like,
nope.
Yeah, exactly. That is wrong. Okay. We don't want, it's because with these types of scenarios, it's not about a right or wrong answer. It's how do you approach
working through it. Yeah.
Working through it. So what would be appropriate then is the applicant asking themselves, why does this person want a waiver? Mm-hmm. And then, so hopefully, we'll see the patient ask that. Once the interviewer gives a response, then, maybe the person's not comfortable changing in the locker room. How does the applicant help that person problem solve?
Okay.
So if that's the issue, then, are there other solutions that could be available? So that's also demonstrating flexibility, that the applicant could have if the scenario changes. And then again, just kind of making sure that they really engage with the patient, with that in that role play and with the patient. And the important thing that they should also do is in the end, the question is still, will you write the waiver, yes or no? So they still have to come to a decision.
Don't forget about that part. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it stresses a lot of applicants out in regards to the idea of the role play. But in reality, I think with a lot of practice, I think with a lot of shadowing and watching other physicians go through that process, I think that people are going to be much more comfortable with that.
So this then kind of circles back to your strong recommendation to have at least 40 hours of some kind of shadowing medically related experience. So you can kind of see these real conversations playing out sometimes.
Yes.
Maybe not necessarily with adolescent or childhood obesity, but with similar types of issues that come up in the exam room.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I have to say, I complimented your website before about the physician shadowing, and while you were talking, I pulled up the site about your preparing for interview. It's great.
Thank you.
It's great. Again, so if you're coming to interview University of Washington, read through this. I mean, it lays out exactly what Stella was just saying about define the problem, tell the interviewers this, tell the interviewers that. They're telling you what they want to hear, and they're giving you some nice prompts. So I think it's great because you said earlier, like, we try to be very transparent, and this is clear. You're not here to trick these applicants that are coming to your school that we're going to throw you something that you've never heard or seen before. They're going to challenge you, but they're not trying to trick you. This is not a game. I love hearing that and seeing that as on your site, because it really backs up what you're saying. Stella, just to kind of start to wind down the admissions process. So your admissions committee in the others, like the WWAMI states, like say in Montana, like they get their decisions back relatively quickly within a couple of weeks of interviewing. What if the applicant finds out they're on the alternate list or wait list? Is it ranked? How does that work? Am I benchmarked against the applicants in Seattle? How does the alt list work or the rank list work?
So because we have seats set aside for each state and each site, the alternate list is going to be made up of folks from that site. So that means Idaho. If you applied for the Idaho site, you are going to be on a special Idaho list. If you applied for Seattle site, then you're going to be on the Seattle alternate list. If you're not from WWAMI and you end up on the alternate list, you'll also be on the Seattle site list as well. Because all of our non-WWAMI applicants will start their will actually be at the Seattle site.
Okay, so
for
they go
their
there.
training.
Okay.
Yeah. Most of our alternate lists are ranked because we do know that it helps reassure applicants to know where they are in regards to being admitted into the program. Our Montana alternate list is unranked because of the complexity of having also students who are applying for the trust program. We have set seats reserved for trust applicants. If we have an applicant who withdraws from the trust program in Montana, this is very specific to Montana, we will take at least as it pertains to the alternate list. So if we have a Montana trust applicant withdraw, then we're going to fill the seat with a Montana trust applicant.
Okay, you got to fill that seat. Yeah.
Each site has set trust seats, so all of our sites actually have trust applicants there.
Okay. Do these sites accept updates for applicants that are on the wait list to say, I'm really interested in coming here? Like they want to send you some love letters. Is that possible or no?
Well, I appreciate the love that they want, and I understand that when you're applying to medical school, it's a waiting game. You can't once you interviewed, it's a lot of waiting, and I want to reassure the applicants that they've done everything that they needed to do in regards to sharing their story and sharing their experiences through their application and the interview. So for that reason, we do not accept updates or letters of intent because we feel that all the information is already there. And if there were some changes, the interview is an excellent time to update us on that. And the reality is that in the past, when we did accept updates or letters of intent, it really didn't change anybody's opinion.
Okay.
The decision's pretty much made based on the materials that we have already. Which is
a ton of information. I mean, applicants have to remember that you're giving us basically your entire life history in AMCAS, plus the secondary information, plus the letters of recommendation. I mean, we have a lot to work with. And you came to interview. So we have all this information. So I can see why some schools don't accept updates because it can get a little unwieldy if you do. Yeah, when people send in all kinds of information. But like you said, we appreciate the love.
Yeah.
But it's a lot to kind of manage. Let me ask you this, Stella. Can you dispel, I have to believe there's got to be a myth out there that there's some strategy in selecting a site for WWAMI. If you're a WWAMI resident, is there a strategy like, I should really pick Idaho because they have 20 spots for Idaho, but I'm not from Idaho, I'm from Montana. I mean, do you hear that among WWAMI applicants that they're trying to game something or they think there's a game to it?
So I have heard that it doesn't really work.
Okay, that's why I'm asking. I mean, just put it out there.
In large part because, again, going back to our mission, we're trying to train doctors for our region and for our state. And so I think an important thing for our regional sites is how likely is someone going to return back to practice. So for Wyoming, Alaska, Montana, and Idaho, it is very important for the interviewers to know if they invest in this applicant to come to this program, are they going to come back and actually be a physician in their states? And so someone who, say, just moves to, Wyoming because there's 20 seats in Wyoming and there's maybe 50 people applying from Wyoming, and they're hoping that by moving to Wyoming, they're going to, be competitive. The reality is that even if they're considered a resident there, they're going to look at their ties to Wyoming and what they've done in Wyoming. And if there's not a lot of ties or if there's not a lot of experience or knowledge of, the communities and the patients that are there, they're not going to be very competitive. I think if an applicant has a choice to make in regards to, establishing residency in one of the states, I think they really should think about where do they see themselves practicing after.
Yeah.
So if they see themselves wanting to practice in Alaska, then and they've grown up in Alaska, then it makes sense for them to apply as an Alaska resident. If they are, from Idaho and they really want to practice in Idaho, then I think that it would make sense for them to apply as an Idaho resident. Now, this has come up with our Washington applicants, because we do have the Seattle site and the Spokane site that students can choose to apply to. And the reality is it comes down to, again, what is the intent and what is the motivation? So I think that as long as people are choosing the sites with a clear intent for why they're applying for a particular site, not necessarily because the admission rate is better. Because if they do that, it does come through.
I'm getting the feeling you guys can kind of sniff that out.
We can sniff it out.
I think I'm hearing that. You're pretty good at sniffing it out. Yeah. Well, Stella, this has been great. I'm glad I think we've been able to kind of get some of your information out there that's going to put some minds at ease about your process. Because again, it's very different compared to a lot of other medical schools. Is there anything that you felt like that we didn't touch on from an admissions perspective or curriculum perspective, or just about the entire school of University of Washington that we didn't kind of hit? I
think that going back to our website, we do have a lot of information on our website. And I feel like if folks want to learn more about the curriculum, we do have a very robust, curriculum site and information.
I'll put links to it. I'll put links to it in the notes. Yeah.
In regards to the admissions, we really do want to make sure that all applicants feel like they have all the tools to be successful in the program. So I definitely would recommend that they check our websites and make sure that, if there are any changes, because we're definitely a team about continuous quality improvement. So we're always looking at our processes and we're looking at it. Is this the best for the applicants? Is this the best for what we're trying to accomplish? We might tweak some stuff and then we'll put it on the website so that applicants are aware of that. So I do want to encourage folks to check it before they apply to us in case things might be a little different.
Yep. It's your, again, I'm loving your website. It's laid out very nicely and very organized. So so people should really check that out. Just to kind of wind things down, Stella, what kind of recommendations do you have for people, listeners in general, just that you recommend to people, whether they're related to medically related things or not?
So in regards to books, I definitely would recommend folks read What Patients Taught Me by Audrey Young. It's actually a book written by one of our alums from our program and talks a lot about what it's like to be in WWAMI and what it's like to do her clerkships and rotations in WWAMI. Cool. So if folks want to get a very inside personal look at what that experience would be like, that would definitely be a book I would recommend people to read.
Okay. All right.
I really enjoyed reading When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi, just because he did such a wonderful way of writing about becoming a patient and what that experience taught him. I also I also really like The Spirit Catches You and You Fall Down by Anne Fadiman, just because it kind of just shows how important it is to how important cultural competency is for physicians and what can happen when that communication is not there. In regards to podcasts, oh my gosh, I'm such a podcast junkie. It's so hard. I listen to a lot. You should see my Stitcher playlist. It's actually kind of, it's really long. I really love This American Life. That is one of my favorite podcasts, just because it really goes into kind of the human experience. And I think it's a great way to, for folks who are trying to go into this profession and working with people. I also really enjoy, this is not medically related. I really enjoy How I Built This. Do you listen to that one too?
I love it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it is. Yep. It is just amazing and so impressive to just hear how people started these huge companies and all the things that come up that you just don't think about and realize, and then how they manage to persist. It's I love it.
I love hearing those stories. Then I know, I don't have that risk bone in my body. I could not take some of the risks that some of these people have taken
Yeah.
get where they are and to build these, you know, these amazing companies or these products. And I'm like, I could never do that. I don't have that risk bone, but gosh, it's interesting to hear and listen to. That's a good one. Do you listen to true crime or anything, or any kind of those
that's
kind
guilty
of
pleasure. Oh my gosh,
episodic ones?
Serial is always great. I love Serial. I've been listening to, there was one called Dear John that was also like an episodic true crime one that I got really into. That one actually became I think that actually became like a Lifetime TV show.
Oh, okay. Wow. Cool. That's a good list. I'll put links to these in the show notes. These are really good ones that people can check out, because I think the recommendations always speak a lot. You know, they people go, oh, that's cool.
And then
check it out
the
too.
other one is Code Switch. I also really like Code Switch.
Code Switch?
Which is about conversation about race and identity.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm going to check that out too. Cool. It's a good list. Stella, this has been really fun to have you on here. And again, we talked about so many things about the transparency of your school and the complexity. I think you really helped clear it up for especially people that are going to be applying now or applying in the future to really help them out. So thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun. Yeah.